Hi, love bugs. Welcome to another episode of Girls Night. Today we have a very special guest because today's guest is someone whose story and mission are both deeply inspiring and incredibly empowering. Julie Mejia is the founder of Holistic Hemp Solutions, a company born from her own personal healing journey. After developing a rare pain disorder called reflex sympathetic dystrophy and realizing the limits of traditional medicine, Julie turned to cannabis as a form of holistic healing. That experience didn't just change her life, it lit a fire in her to help others reclaim their health too. Since then, she's become a leader in the wellness and cannabis space with 2 patents pending, a growing client base, and a fierce commitment to changing how we view plant medicine. She also gives back by offering pro bono services to cancer patients, and she shares her voice and knowledge as the host of the Holistic Alternative on USA Global TV. Julie is a true example of purpose driven entrepreneurship, blending science, soul, and advocacy to create long lasting impact. And I am so excited to have her speaking with us today. So let's get into the episode. Hi, everyone. Life can get a little crazy, so let's talk about it. If you're ready to dive deeper, talk about what really matters, and feel a little more empowered, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Carleydoxtator. I'm a life coach, baker, dog mom of 2, and you're always there for you, gal pal. And I'm so excited to have you join me. So grab your fuzzy socks, put on your comfy pants, and let's have girls' night. Julie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me and for the beautiful introduction. It's so nice to be with you today, and it's an honor and a privilege.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an honor and a privilege to have you here because for everybody who's listening, me and Julie have talked a little bit. Her story is really inspiring. So, Julie, to start off the episode, do you want to introduce yourself and share your story and share your journey to how you got where you are today?
Sure, happy to tell the world a little bit about what's going on. So, my name is Julie Ann Mejia. I am the CEO and founder of Holistic Hemp Solutions. We're a holistic health company, and I have developed international patent pending rare minor cannabinoid products that help with a variety of conditions. Unfortunately, I was working in traditional medicine. I got injured on the job and developed a rare pain disorder, as you described as RSD or reflex sympathetic dystrophy. And unfortunately, the only traditional methodology that allopathic model has is opioid use. And not only did I lose, a sense of who I was as a person and as a human being, but I had zero quality of life, and it truly did not help my neuropathic pain. So I really was desperate to look for alternative resolutions because, I was just a zombie all the time. I could barely walk. I was told by the court system and the doctors that I'd never walk again properly, that I should get on SSDI. And I said to myself, I refuse to let this be my story. I was 28 at the time when I got injured. And it was just really a scary time for me. So, my brother actually had moved out to Denver, Colorado. And, my first time ever in a dispensary, I could barely walk. I was with my mom and my brother, and I told the bud tender, I said, what do you have for pain? I'm willing to try anything at this point. And I'd always been supportive of plant-based medicine, but, coming from a traditional medicine model, it was frowned upon and it was demonized. And there was a lot of propaganda surrounding plant-based medicines. When you're in a traditional methodology for the healthcare system, it's an allopathic sick care model. And that's the reality of it. They do not make money on curing people or having people be self-reliant on their own products or plants. And, it was frowned upon. So thankfully, at that time, I was able to find some products at the dispensary that worked. And I immediately went home to Massachusetts and applied for my cannabis card and got that right away. And when recreation passed in 2016, I said, oh my God, I have to, give back now and share my story about how these have helped me. I don't want someone else to have to go through what I went through because I wasn't given a choice. And that's a really concerning factor in regards to healthcare now. There aren't choices. You're not giving any type of Western or Easternized medicine choices. It's either A, you take the pharmaceuticals or the synthetics, or they're not going to help you. And that's the reality.
Hmm. Yeah, and on that point too, I mean, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I'm a huge believer in holistic health. I myself go to a holistic doctor because if you think about it, I mean, Western medicine, yes, Western medicine is like on the newer side of things, right? Eastern medicine has been around for centuries and it's been helping to cure people for centuries. So to your point, it's kind of crazy that we would try to demonize a plant that just happens naturally in nature.
Yeah, it's insane to me. I think the model is very flawed. I think physicians should be trained in both Easternized and Westernized approaches because, again, what works for one person might not work for everyone. And to be honest, they should be exhausting all natural remedies before offering a synthetic pharmaceutical that might do more damage to the body.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And so I think it's really interesting that your background actually was in pharmaceuticals. I think that gives you a really unique perspective on those two different sides of the coin. So can you dive a little bit deeper into that aspect of it as well? Because I know that you like to, I mean, you've told me that you have kind of a scientific based mind. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the influence that that has on the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the question. I have a BS in psychology with a concentration in cognitive neuroscience and research. And then I had a minor in criminal justice. So, I applied that. Unfortunately, research, it was really depleting for me. And I didn't feel it was as therapeutic for me, for my goals as a, person that wanted to be a provider and work with patients. So I got out of the research aspect and started working directly with patients in a variety of different settings. I worked in, closed lockdown units in the psychiatric wards, to doing advocacy and case management. And then my job, the last job I had in the traditional sector, I worked as a coordinator at a nonprofit agency that helped manage an accredited school and residential program for kids with psychiatric, behavioral, and cognitive functioning issues. And that's when I got injured on the job. So, and at that point, we had looked, and part of my job at that point was doing the clinical assessments with the physicians, talking about the medications, doing the breakdowns about side effects. And what we noticed from applied science, from a behavioral standpoint of how children were functioning or not functioning on some of these pharmaceuticals that they were being placed on.
Can you touch a little bit more on how you like how you fully decided to make the deep dive into the cannabis industry? Because I mean, even as you mentioned, at the time that you were kind of exploring it, it was recently it had recently become recreationally legal to have, at least in Colorado. So can you talk about your journey with fully deciding to go into it?
Yeah, absolutely. So after trying cannabis through the recreational program in Colorado and then applying on the medical side in Massachusetts, I had just gone through such a transformation. I went from being only able to take a few steps a day to making pretty much a full recovery. I had had like moments that were tough, but it was
Mhm.
nothing like after I was injured where like I was having trouble moving my limbs or the pain was so intense that, it would send like a shocking signal down my
Oh
whole right
gosh.
side of my body.
Yeah.
Uh, so I was such a believer. It gave me my life back. And I wanted to just help others heal with the products that I had learned about. And just, I had done a deep dive even before, trying products, about cannabinoid therapies. My aunt had also been diagnosed with cancer right around the time I had gotten injured. So I was looking for healing for myself and for my aunt because, from a research aspect, there's a lot of research outside of the United States in regards to cannabinoid therapies and cancer and a number of different ailments. So,
Hmm.
I had even traveled to Canada, in 2015 looking for rare minor cannabinoids. We couldn't find them anywhere. Nobody was doing or working with the acids. And that was really perplexing to me. And I'm like, well, how do they know about the acids, but nobody's working with them and there's no products out there for it? And I
Yeah.
couldn't locate anything in the US either. And that's really what kind of propelled my interest into the rare minor and the acids. I thought they were not being looked at, as well as they should have been. So,
Mhm.
THC is one cannabinoid, CBD is another, but there's
Okay.
so many others.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't know, including myself until rather recently, that there's so many other parts of the plant that have those different benefits.
Exactly. And, something that really just, as I got into the space, perplexed me from a lab perspective, working in the lab setting, that people were isolating key components of the plant, replacing them and putting them back together with other terpenes that didn't belong with that profile and other cannabinoids that weren't meant to be with that profile. So, that really projected how I started using the cold processing methodology after I met Steve Hunt, who was a colleague and a mentor out in Oregon. But we'll get into that later, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good time to talk about it now because you have those two patents pending. Are those two patents pending related to this process that you're talking about now? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So in 2017, I had already gotten into the space. I was doing the research, I was doing the advocacy work. I had gone to a conference out in Eugene, Oregon, and met some beautiful people out there who said, listen, if you move out here, we'll teach you everything you need to know about the plant. And I worked with 3 different medical growers. I picked up my life, drove cross country, moved up to Oregon, and, I left my family and everything, for a while just to immerse myself in the culture because I felt it was such a strong, important task to do because in New England, there was one dispensary and one grow open. There
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of opportunity locally to learn.
Hmm.
And I felt it was an important, aspect to do. So that's really what pushed me to get into the space. And, like I said, I met some beautiful people out there. I worked with a gentleman, we call him Cowboy Steve. He's an OG in the cannabis space, been working with the plant for over 40 years.
Wow.
Older gentleman, had his own grow and everything, and taught me about cold processing methodologies on the cannabis plant. And I said, Steve, I've been looking for the acids. Do you think I could apply this methodology to hemp? Because no one's doing CBDA, no one's doing CBGA. Some of the acids that I've been looking for, I can't find.
Hmm.
I said, Julie, I think you should try it. It can't hurt. So that's really what pushed me to start using the cold methodology, taking what he started and just taking it to the next level. And I did include him on the patents for
Oh,
the
that's
oil.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, you have to give credit where credit's due. Without his help, I wouldn't, know about it.
On that point, I think it's great that Cowboy Steve won. I love that he's Cowboy Steve. But I love that Cowboy Steve had a part in helping you in your journey with this too. And really, the industry that you're in, I would say, is a heavily male-dominated industry, right? So
Right.
I think one it's a really great example of how men are supporting women, but also given that it's a male dominated space, are there any unique challenges that you faced in your journey and in growing your business, and how did you overcome those challenges?
There's a lot of challenges in
Yeah.
the space from all the red tape and the legality side of things and having to go the extra mile because it's a very restrictive industry. I mean, it took me forever to look for the right processor and the banking system. Like, it took a long time to get those pieces together, but thankfully we're working with some great partnerships in that. But in regards to being in a male dominated industry, it was totally disheartening. I had worked with some male business partners that were really awful, like different things in regards to, I was told, hey, you should focus on, the dispensary project with the women, like
Oh,
different stuff
ew.
like that. Like, or, new people in the space when you're coming out and you're introduced to like a male dominated owned company, we'll just
Hmm.
say there's all males working there.
Hmm.
to get a word in, or you're not taking you seriously, or they treat you or diminish you as a person and
Mm-hmm.
treat you more like a sex object. And that's
Yeah.
what I've realized about being a woman in the space. I really had to, set myself apart even further than most because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a challenge.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of women can relate to is especially the feeling of being dismissed at work, whether it is for your own company, like in your case, or just kind of in general. I mean, that's happened to me before too. And for me, it was more like I was selling and sometimes I would be talking to these older guys. My boss would be on with me. I would say something about the product or whatever that we were selling and then the guy would dismiss me and then when my boss would turn around and say almost word for word exactly what I said, then the guy that we were talking to would be like, "Oh yeah, that makes complete sense." And it's like, "Okay, like does it matter that it just came out of a man's mouth instead of my mouth?" But I think that's an experience that a lot of women can relate to is feeling dismissed like that.
It's awful. It really is. And it's totally disheartening because, again, you're working with a plant that is supposed to bring love and togetherness.
Hmm.
Uh, Cannabis has no eyes. It doesn't see race. It doesn't see sex, So it's a concerning point. I think we're getting to a better place in the system. But I know still a lot of women that suffer and deal with a lot of, trauma in that regard with
Hmm.
being um, persecuted as being a woman. And even in regards to like lab settings and talking about, I'll give you a great example, right? Typically, people in the space, they consider certain products to be a full spectrum product. And I would tell people, I'm like, is it really though? Because you're using heat and you're burning off key components of the plant. It's not really a full spectrum product, it's a broad spectrum product. So, like,
Hmm.
even just challenging what should be a common thought was looked down upon, and it's really the best word I can use is disheartening, and
Hmm.
it's very sad to see that. But I think women are gaining some grounding in the space because, again, I think a lot of times, from a business perspective, women run the show a lot of times in the background, and
Hmm.
men are starting to see that, especially in our space.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I think it's really disturbing, and it's not just men. I mean,
Yeah.
I worked on a dispensary project with a bunch of other executive professionals, and all of us got screwed over by a female couple.
Hmm.
One of them's in prison right now. So, like,
God.
again, I think from a perspective of especially being a newer industry, I don't want to demonize men, but I'll just
Right.
say this that having a newer industry, I think you get a lot of it's like a gold rush, right? There's a lot
Hmm.
of snakes out there,
Hmm.
and they come in all forms. So,
Right.
unfortunately, just being a woman and dealing with the opposite sex, it just comes up a lot more, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up too. It's not about demonizing men, right? It's not all men, obviously, but
No,
these are
no.
real challenges that women face, and it's real challenges that you faced in your journey too, Julie. And so I think it's important for us to talk about both sides of that. Um,
Absolutely.
and so on that note, what advice would you give to other women who are looking to start a business in industries that feel off limits or feel intimidating or anything like that? Because I'm sure that felt a little bit intimidating for you when you were first going into it.
It was more frustrating than
Okay.
anything because I felt like I was trying to be silenced. Like, you know, I was almost like felt like I was being made to be a muse. And I'm like, I'm no one's muse. Like, I am my own person, my own entity, my own being. I have my own voice.
Hmm.
So that was the hardest part for me. And, I didn't want someone to, capitalize on my thoughts, my ideas, and my innovation.
Yeah.
So that was a hard point. I'd say for women getting to a male dominated space, don't be scared, just do
Mhm.
it and you just take it as it comes. I think if we psych ourselves out from a psychology perspective, right? A lot of times, Nike says it best, just do it. Um, I think that's just diving headfirst in and sometimes is the best course of action because if we sit and we stew on the fear, then a lot of times we're not going to do it.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like our brains, at least speaking from personal experience, our brains are really good at coming up with situations that likely will never happen, right? The worst case scenarios, we can think through all of them. And usually, when you actually just go out and do something, it's a lot easier, one, than you think that it's going to be in your head. And usually, that worst case scenario is so far out of left field that the chances of it actually happening are so minimal. But in our heads, if we stew on it, then it feels something that's really possible to happen, even if it's not. So, to that point, yeah, I would say just go out and do it.
Absolutely. And I do believe in the power of manifestation too. Like,
hmm
if you put negativity out, you're going to get that back. So again, think positive, dive in head first, and just take the challenges as they come. Of course, you're going to have challenges with regards to anything in life, but to sit and say, I'm not going to do it because it's, too many guys and I don't feel like I'm going to be safe. It's really empowering as a woman to say, well, screw that. I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
No one's going to tell me just because I'm a woman, I can't do it or try to silence my voice. And I think that's the big component is just gathering your strength and your braveness with encountering any task that's scary.
hmm Yeah, I love that so much. And I love your attitude and your mindset towards it because I think you're a really good example of one, that being headstrong is a good thing, and two, just standing up for yourself, right? And going after what you want. I really admire that about you. And even just in this conversation, I feel like it's very evident that that is who you show up as. And that's really inspiring to anybody who is a little bit fearful or who is feeling a little bit more timid in their goals. So if anybody listening is looking for an inspiration, you can definitely look towards Julie.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And the other thing too, I mean, sometimes working with other women, it depends upon the person you're working with, right? It
hmm
can be very challenging too. If
hmm
somebody is egotistical
Yep.
and again, that's across all sexes, right? There can
Right.
be people that have ego trips and different things or feel threatened. So again, find your tribe. It sometimes takes a bit to find the right people to connect with and to have that higher level of meaningfulness in regards to business and stuff, but keep going. You will find your tribe, and it just takes some time sometimes to put together.
Yeah. That's so important too, is being surrounded by people that understand you and people that support you. I was listening to a podcast last night. I forget it was an almost 30 podcast. I forget exactly who the guest was. But they were talking about how everything is just kind of like components, and sometimes those components don't work well together. So he was using a song as an example where it's like if there's a note that's off, it's not the note itself that is bad or there's nothing wrong with the note. It's just that it's surrounded by components that it doesn't really mesh well with. And the same is with you as a person. If something feels off, if you feel like something isn't quite clicking, then maybe it's just about changing the components that you're surrounding yourself with.
Right? No, and I totally agree with that sentiment. And to your point, we're all frequencies, we're all energy.
hmm
So again, if you have a low vibrational person and you're a high vibrational person bringing a lot of light into the world, you're not going to mesh well with that low vibe person.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's just the way of the world. And that's okay. Just recognizing those feelings, though, when they happen in real time, can save you a lot of stress, anxiety, and aggravation. Because again, you remove yourself from those situations and those specific people that make you feel depleted or
hmm
less than, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And a good example for that, when I picture like frequencies and how we line up with different frequencies, I think of like tuning forks. So when you a tuning fork, when you do the tuning fork, it will, and there's other tuning forks around, only the ones that are at the same frequency as that original tuning fork will start to go off, and then the other ones won't. So it's kind of the same, right? You're just looking for your tuning forks that are at the same frequency as you.
Exactly. That's a great point and a great example to use. And yeah, I mean, we see it all the time. We see how music impacts water. You can see
hmm
the vibrations changing and the ripple effect. And that's really what it is. It's a ripple effect uh,
hmm
that vibrations put out into the world. So again, you're going to attract the right people if you're in the right mindset. And again, you attract what you put out. So for anyone that's having a tough time out there and they're meeting the wrong people, we really need to look within and say, hey, well, why is this continually happening as a pattern? What am I putting out that is attracting this type of energy?
Hi, Love Bug. I've got a juicy little gift for you. And if you've been feeling off, stuck in your head, or like your vibe just is not vibing lately, then this is for you. I created a free guide called The 3 Secrets to Creating a Magnetic Energy Shift right now. And it's exactly what you need to start shifting your energy instantly. These are the exact tools I use with my private coaching clients when they're ready to stop chasing and start attracting. We're talking powerful, we're talking practical, and yes, of course, we are talking a little bit woo, but in the best possible way. In the guide, you will learn how to clear energetic blocks, activate your most irresistible frequency, shift into receiving mode, and there's even a bonus secret on how to use your body language to instantly boost your confidence and presence. So if you're ready to feel like the version of you who turns heads, magnetizes opportunities, and walks through the world like the main character, then this is your sign. Head to the show notes and click the link to download your free copy. It is quick, it is powerful, and it is going to leave you feeling like, damn, I really am that girl. All right, let's get back into the episode. You're speaking my language, Julie. I should just hand the podcast over to you because you're doing an amazing job.
On mine. It's going to be so much fun. We're going to have a blast.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious, what has been maybe the most challenging thing about working in the cannabis industry? Because you've touched on it a little bit, but it's highly regulated. To this day, it's still highly regulated. I'm sure that there's still a lot of gray area. There's a lot of places that there's still a lot of growth that can happen. So what has been the most challenging thing that you've run into?
I mean, filing for international patent protections was a whole other beast.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even just writing the patents, the application for them, it's like writing a dissertation.
Okay.
I did have some attorneys help on the back end with cleaning stuff up and just doing a couple things. But, when you're reading the patents, that's like 95% me, so it's like,
That's crazy.
a lot. So I think that was a whole nother level, but I felt responsible to do it for not only myself, but for our industry. And what really pushed me to file, and I was never a person to want to patent anything, but really what pushed me was a study that came out a few years back from Oregon State.
Okay.
And it talked about CBDA and CBGA helping with COVID. So one of our products, our tincture, that's a rare minor cannabinoid formulation, contains CBDA and CBGA. And at the time, I was the only one working with those two rare minor cannabinoids in the same finalized composition. So that's really what pushed me. I was concerned for not only myself, but other caregivers to remain and have safe access to continue working with these compositions, because I said to myself, if Big Brother and Big Pharma get involved with this, I said, they're gonna screw everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not only gonna screw people, but they're gonna make this something that is not clean. They add a lot of crap to these products, and they're not great for the body to process, or they isolate them and make synthetics, or again, that was a bigger concern, and that's really what pushed me to file. But it's been a whole other beast. So I'd say, surrounding the patents and stuff, one of the most concerning aspects of it, I'll give you a great example. When we went to put out our press release about the patents and having a naturalized composition that was patent pending for COVID symptomology reduction and prevention, it was a public service announcement for those that couldn't take the vaccine or didn't do well with it. And we had a really hard time dealing with the press and traditional media systems. And we did a little bit of digging, and what we found, I'll give you a great example, and I don't care to blow them up, but I'm going to.
Please do.
So the Boston Globe, a big news outlet in New England, very well known. We were wondering why people like them didn't pick it up, being a public service announcement. And to our investigation findings, we found out that Pfizer was paying for paid coverage through the Boston Globe. So
Oh,
we therefore ended up being a direct competitor.
oh,
So that's why they chose not to pick up our press release. And we had a really hard time getting this out there in the major news outlets because, again, anything that goes against the grain or is looked at as alternative, right?
mm-hmm,
Or plant based and isn't supported by big pharma and being paid on the back end for coverage by big pharma is not always picked up. So
mm-hmm.
that was a big issue that we had. And
Yeah,
it was concerning because I thought it was really unjust. I mean, news outlets are supposed to be unbiased
yes.
and put out, the news, so it
Yeah.
was a big announcement that we made for the patents because, again, the only other patented, cannabinoid product, we have Epidiolex by GW Pharma, and then there's another synthetic THC product. And, there's very few products that are patentable or patent pending
Mm-hmm.
market in regards to cannabinoid therapy. So it was a big deal. And, we had so much blockage in that regard.
Mm-hmm. And that's really unfortunate to your point because I think it's easy to forget sometimes that big pharma is a for-profit industry and you make profits when I mean, I won't go too deep into the conspiracy or whatever, but when you're a pharmaceutical company, you make profits by selling your medicine. And so like you sell more medicine when people are sick, right? And it's just really unfortunate that there's solutions like this out there that are alternatives to big pharma and they get squished sometimes, even though like they could do so much good for the people that are struggling with these different things, like with your pain disorder. Like, no one should have to live their life in that much pain, right? And if there's a solution out there to help them, then why wouldn't we want to get that solution to them as easy as possible?
Exactly. And to your point, right? Pfizer's been around over 100 years, cured nothing,
Right,
so
right.
again, it's a business for them.
Hmm.
Um, Again, they do not make money on curing people. They make money on keeping people sick and complicit to their system. It's a cycle,
Hmm.
unfortunately. As someone that worked in it and then became a victim of it and saw it for what it truly was, again, pharmaceuticals have their place. I'm not demonizing all pharmaceuticals or
Right,
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but again, I am the survivor of the system.
right. Yeah, and you have, I mean, again, we touched on this earlier, but you have firsthand experience being in the system, working for the pharmaceutical company, now working for a holistic alternative. I mean, I feel like you have a very well-rounded experience in all of it. So I think it's really interesting to hear your point on it.
No, thank you. And I appreciate that. And I'd say, like, my first time encountering something so horrific in the system, I was 19 years old. I was working at a psychiatric group home in undergrad, still going through college.
Hmm.
And we had a patient who was stabilized on a medication. And all of a sudden, he came home with a new prescription. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. And I still talk about it with my ex coworker that we used to work together. He works in a
Hmm.
different industry now, but we laugh about it because it's so profoundly insane. This gentleman was put on a different pharmaceutical, even though the one he was taking worked well for his
Hmm.
psychiatric condition. And upon the change, he was totally catatonic, couldn't speak, like
Really?
no quality of life. And upon further investigation, like, the state got involved, we reported it and stuff like that. We found that the psychiatrist that prescribed the new med was getting kickbacks for that med.
Oh,
So
that's,
that was my first like encounter with, hey, something's not right here with the medical system. And,
mhm.
I saw a number of different concerning factors working throughout and always try to be a voice of, reason with that. Because again, when you're working with human patients, they need to be the forefront and it can't be
Mhm.
for profit. And it's just, it was so, heart wrenching and heartbreaking for us to see this
Yeah.
client really well and then all of a sudden become really sick and nonverbal because of a medication changed and it was for a very scary reason.
Hmm. That is really unfortunate to hear that because I mean, it just should not be about, as you said, it should not be about profit. It should be about helping people get healthy, right? That's what it should be about. And as soon as that patient that you're referring to was showing those signs of it not working, then they should have been switched back. But I guess since the doctor or the psychiatrist was getting the kickbacks, then that would have meant them losing money, and that's really unfortunate to hear.
It happens a lot more than we realize. And unfortunately, when you're working in any institution, it's just that it's an institution. So there's a
Hmm.
hierarchy model. And a lot of times when you're working at a large, for-profit agency,
Hmm.
they're going to do whatever they can to protect themselves. And it's not about the clients. It's
Right.
about what the bottom dollar is. And that's not how I feel the system should be run.
Right. I agree. I completely agree with that statement. That is not how it should be run. Um, So can you, Julie, you've obviously done a lot of really great work working directly with people. Can you share a little bit more about your pro bono work that you're doing with the cancer patients?
Absolutely. It's definitely something that I hold near and dear to my heart. Like I explained a little bit earlier, my aunt was diagnosed right around the same time I got injured on the job with triple negative breast cancer.
Hmm.
And, she was in the traditional medical field, was a dentist, and
Okay.
believed and trusted completely in the system. Went through radiation and chemotherapy and double mastectomy, and unfortunately, the cancer just kept coming back and back. And, I'd watched her for 2 years really suffer. And I just started pulling all the research, coming from a research background, I was pulling all the research
Hmm.
about diet and supplementation and lifestyle changes surrounding cancer. And I put together this protocol, and I've been working with cancer patients ever since. My aunt actually went into full remission. It was the only time she
Wow.
ever went into remission. And she did it with using this protocol and did the diet changes, the supplement changes, and then doing cannabinoid therapies, which creates cellular death known as apoptosis for cancer cells.
Wow.
So she felt well enough. She was in remission. She went and traveled with her husband for like 3 months. And that's a whole other issue. She didn't have safe access
Hmm.
overseas to the cannabinoid products, and, wasn't following her diet as well, being overseas and traveling.
Right.
So just within that 3 month span, and if not taking the cannabinoids, not eating clean, not taking the supplements, the cancer came back full force. And
Really.
unfortunately, by the time she got home, it was like too extensive to recover from. I did lose my aunt, and this
Oh.
is something that I give back to the community in her honor.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's a beautiful way to give back to the community because again, we saw it work for her and a number of other patients, and
Yeah.
it's been a blessing to bring this, to the world.
Hmm. I think that's amazing. And I recently interviewed someone else for the podcast who's doing a lot of research on kind of this same area with specifically in relation to cancer and how the cannabinoids and cannabis can help with cancer. So I think that's really interesting that you bring that up. I'm so sorry about your aunt, but I think it's great that you give back in her name. And I mean, to me, it makes me wonder if she had started that earlier, like if it would have been a different outcome, you know?
I do. I think again, and we go back to the point of, exhausting all the natural stuff first.
Right.
Then, my concept of what healthcare should be is exactly that. Let's exhaust all the natural remedies first. And if all else fails, as a last resort, let's use synthetic pharmaceuticals. And it's a backward system. So it's most
Hmm.
of the time when I'm getting a patient, they've already been put through the ringer. Their body's depleted. They're using it as a last resort, and it should be used as a first option.
Absolutely. And to your point earlier, how it should be a choice. Like people should at least be offered the choice to choose which route that they want to go down.
Well, and the reality is, chemo and radiation, first of all, it damages everything in the body. But not only that, um, if you're still eating crap and you're still taking, these synthetic treatments, it's going to come back. Cancer really is a lifestyle change, and it needs to be looked at that, because just like any disease like diabetes or anything else, you have to change your lifestyle. And if you don't do that, you're setting yourself up for failure or, reoccurrent cancer.
Hmm. Yeah, and I feel like too with cancer, sometimes when it goes away, it comes back even stronger the next time. So I mentioned this on one of my podcast episodes recently, but there's this book about someone's talking about the same type of thing, not with cannabis. She's more so talking about the foods that we eat and how that can help just fuel our bodies and help us to be healthy. So in this book, she kind of has a similar story a little bit where she was diagnosed with cancer and she was getting chemotherapy and all this stuff, but she completely changed her diet, changed her lifestyle, and the changes that she made it so that she had minimal symptoms with the chemotherapy. And she went into full remission. So it's a really interesting book. I'll put that in the show notes too. It's called This Is Your Brain on Food, and she kind of like goes through different mental health disorders too, and how different foods can kind of help support us getting better or can actually make those mental health disorders worse. So it's really interesting, and I think it really relates to what you're saying too, because there's natural remedies that we can make before going to such extremes.
No, I think that's a perfect point as well. I mean, the concept of you are what you eat is everything.
Hmm.
So most people aren't aware of this. From gut health perspective, everything stems from the gut. Everything, all illness stems from your gut. So if you're eating crap, if you've taken a slew of toxic antibiotics that have broken down your biome and eliminated good bacteria, and you have bad bacteria festering, you're literally going to be um, unfortunately, a composition of your gut. So it's going to impact your mood. It's going to impact your skin.
Hmm.
It's going to impact a variety of things and overall well-being. So if you're a sick person, you have to be looking at your gut and ways to heal it and clean it up. And again, your diet is one composition of this formulation to rebalancing your body. But I think a lot of times the cannabinoids are the missing piece, right? We
Hmm.
talk about how having these plants be made illegal for such a long period of time has really disconnected the human system, right? We have an endocannabinoid system to process these compositions. And
Hmm.
if we're not having access to them, and our immune system is not going to be functionally optimal,
Yeah.
reality to that.
Yeah, and there's so on that point too, Julie actually shared an article about, I mean, when you think of the cannabinoids and the endocannabinoid system, there's not just the marijuana plant that has those components. Julie actually shared an article that was talking about it's like a bush in Brazil. I'll let you talk about it, Julie, because you know more about it than I do. But it has some of those same components. So can you talk about that a little bit too, Julie?
Yeah, of course. So there are a number of different cannabinoids and terpenes that can be found in a variety of things. Women's, mother's milk, they produce cannabinoids for their children.
Oh,
So
interesting.
again, yeah, it's really a fascinating thing, but other plants can actually produce cannabinoids as well. And there was a Brazilian common plant found to produce CBD. So again, I feel like we are just starting to reach the tip of the iceberg in regards to finding out what plants do what. And I think science and research really needs to be focal on looking at more naturalized approaches and what these compositions hold. Because if you don't, again, you're missing out on key components. And I believe that every plant on this planet is put here for a reason.
Yeah.
And unless we research and figure out what it does, we're never going to know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Can you tell us a little bit more about Holistic Hemp Solutions itself and really looking into the future? What's next for what you're doing with Holistic Hemp Solutions? Do you have any big dreams or anything coming down the pipeline for us to get excited about?
Absolutely. Yes. So, Holistic Hemp Solutions is a holistic health company. We have two rare minor patent pending cannabinoid products for a variety of different conditions. And I say different conditions in the fact that we filed for a number of conditions. I'm being matter of fact about it. We have to be careful what we say. We can't make any claims about stuff, but I can tell you personally that it's helped me in a variety of conditions, with my chronic pain disorder and using the topical. My topical has 5 different anti-inflammatory ingredients and the high concentration cannabinoids as well. And, I tried so many products around the world for my chronic pain disorder and couldn't find anything that worked well enough. So that's really what the motivating factor was for inventing that product. But we're patent pending for pain, inflammation, skin conditions like psoriasis and eczema, and then wound care. Nobody talks about this, right? You're using petroleum-based products, and then you're wondering why, after a post-operative surgery, you're getting infections, right? And a lot of times people don't process the petroleum-based products well. Again, there's parts per million in there. You're literally putting gas on a wound. So it's a harsh reality that a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah.
And it was a byproduct discovered from like oil rigs, the rings out in the ocean. So it's a concerning factor. So it's nice to bring, holistic remedies that our bodies are meant to process. We're meant to process plants. We have, systems to process them, and our bodies typically do better with them. And then our tincture is developed for a variety of conditions, and we're patent pending for pain, inflammation, seizure disorders, COVID symptomology reduction and prevention, to name a few. And, we're safe for pets. We've tested everything anecdotally as young as infancy. We have patients using the products as old as 100.
Wow.
So, it's a beautiful product, both of them, for a variety of different things. But in regards to your other question, I've been dealing personally with some toxicity. I also had some medical trauma surrounding a vaccine. I'm not telling people that all vaccines are bad, but for me, I didn't process it well. I had an autoimmune response to the flu shot in 2015. And then in 2020, I was put on an insulin pump, and I had a severe response to that, and now developed a sensitivity to the additives being placed in all injectable insulin. So again, I think from a motivating standpoint and trying to solve my own medical issues, it pushes me to create new things and new opportunities to help the world heal. So my next project that we're working on right now, and we're looking to raise capital and we're trying to get funded for this, is a cellular therapy project where we're using a person's own cells to help restore their health. A lot of times products have been developed. I'll give you a good example. There was a guy named Douglas Melton over at the Harvard Stem Cell Institute who had a child that had type 1 diabetes, developed a cellular treatment for diabetes, and sold his company for $900 million to Veritech Pharmaceuticals in Cambridge, Mass. So instead of taking his protocol that they knew worked, they did instead, because they didn't feel they could make as much money. Money again, right?
Of course.
They took his protocol, but instead of using a patient's own cells, they took dead patients' isol and beta cells, infused them into, like an infusion therapy for the patient, and then placed the patient on anti-rejection medications. So now they're having to be on a new medication for the remainder of their life.
Wow.
So, which is sometimes worse than the disease you're targeting. So again, we're looking to actually heal people at the root cause of their illness. So I am working with a molecular biologist right now. We found a full collaboration lab to work with, and we're starting to put these pieces together for that project. And it's just so exciting to have that. The other exciting thing we're working on right now is global expansion. We're trying to get the products into the Canadian healthcare system, as there's a strong need for them there.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the Canadian system, they don't have clean material to work with like we do here in the US. Like, I work with organic hemp. They don't have that. They're spraying it with pesticides. There's heavy metals. It's GMO. It's not organic practices, So again, they're having to remediate their finalized compositions, and we don't do that because we don't have a need for it. I won't even work with raw material that's been sprayed or tested positive for anything.
That's amazing. All of that sounds so exciting. I'm so excited to hear about everything that is coming up, Julie. I know we're coming up at the end of the time, so I do have one more question. If you could go back, speak to your younger self at the beginning of all of this, what would you say to her? What would you say to your younger self?
I would tell myself, look into the holistic stuff, stop using the synthetics, eat clean, you know, do a lot less toxicity in your life. And, if I could go back and warn myself, I'd tell myself, yeah, probably don't get vaccinated, So unfortunately, I had to go through what I went through. And I think I am a voice for the diabetic community and raising awareness for these toxic chemicals that they're adding into all injectable insulin on a global scale.
Hmm.
I have no regrets, like I
Good.
don't say why did this happen to me or why am I going through this? I try to find the message behind it. It's like, okay, so you're in this place now, like let's make the best out of it. There's a reason why you're here.
Right.
So it's really about deciphering and not being a victim, but it's being empowered by whatever you're diagnosed with or whatever comes your way. How can I make something positive out of this?
That's amazing. I think that's beautiful advice as well, because truly I believe that too, that everything kind of shapes us and guides us to where we're supposed to be. And look at all the amazing things that you have done from your story, because you have come over a lot of obstacles, even just based on what you've shared in the episode, and you've turned it into something so beautiful where you're helping so many other people and kind of at the forefront of this movement towards healthier living and holistic health. So I think that's an incredible thing and an incredible journey that you've been on. So thank you so much for sharing that with all of us here too.
Thank you so much for asking and for listening and putting this out there. I appreciate all the work that you do for our beautiful community and for other women. So I thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Julie. And for anybody who wants to get in contact with you or who wants to know or learn more about about Holistic Hemp Solutions and the products that you offer, where can they best reach you at?
The easiest way is to just hit us up on the website. It's www.h as in Harry, H as in Harry, solutions with an S at the end, .co, not com. A lot of people put the com in there like, I can't find it. The
Great.
website is the best way to get in touch with us.
Perfect. I will go ahead and I will link the website so y'all don't have to go searching for it. It'll be right there for you in the show notes. But again, thank you so much for coming on, Julie. I am so excited to see everything that you are doing, and all the impact that you're going to have. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate everything and hope everyone has a beautiful rest of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. You too. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Love you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you liked what you heard, then go ahead and subscribe so you get updates with us every week. You can also follow us on Instagram at krccoaching. If you're interested in working one-on-one, then go ahead and visit our website, krccoaching.com, to book your first 30-minute session for free. All right, thanks so much, you guys. Love you. Bye.